These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thanks for joining us today on Market Journal. As always, the team's been busy putting together a full show for you. That includes cold weather moving in. We'll be sharing some practical tips to keeping cattle comfortable all throughout the winter months. Steve White, he's going to be taking a look at last week's U.S. Meat Export Federation Fall Conference, which took place in Indianapolis. And Eric Hunt, he's standing by with your weekly weather outlook. But first, we're going to begin with a look back at the 2025 Ag Tech Connect Conference. Earlier this summer, that conference was held at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Innovation Campus. While we were there, we talked about why protecting agriculture is a matter of national security and how producers can stay aware of the many ways that their data might be accessed. Today we're talking about some of the top threats facing the agriculture sector. Joining me now is the special agent in charge of the Omaha FBI field office, that is Gene Cowell. Thank you very much. You were a keynote speaker as part of the Ag Tech Connect conference, warning startup companies, but also the producers in the audience about the threats out there right now. You kind of detail 4 of them. We get into that in a second, but right now, as you see it, what's the top threat that farmers and ranchers should be aware of?
I would say this: wherever your farm or ranch is or your food production facility, whether it's Scottsbluff or Kearney or Omaha, the cyber risk and the national security risk to the ag community is growing exponentially. And it's something we're very focused on engaging with the ag sector on, helping those farmers and ranchers protect it the best we can. You know, something we do well in Nebraska is we grow food, we grow feed, we grow biofuel. And because of that, the greater degree that we can work together to protect it, greater degree we can protect our country's national security.
Why are people interested in agriculture in particular? Foreign adversaries probably come to mind. What's their interest in agriculture?
There's a couple of things they might be interested in. So foreign adversaries, namely the People's Republic of China, they're interested in our data and our technology. You know, one thing we do really well here, better than anyone in the world, is grow things, right? Grow food, grow feed, grow biofuel, and process biofuel. And that technology is something other countries want. And the government of China has said this is a goal of theirs to become dominant in agriculture. And if they have to steal technology to do it, they will. The other thing we're worried about is the threat from malware, whether it's criminals using ransomware to target our agricultural facilities, especially during critical times like harvest and planting, or whether it's a nation state who during some kind of adversarial conflict wants to shut down our ability to grow things during harvest time or planting time. It's a threat we're worried about. And then number 4, we're always worried about the threat from terrorist groups on using pathogens or other materials to really impact our ability to grow food and feed.
Well, these attacks have become quite sophisticated over the years as we look at different examples of different groups that have been attacked over the years in the agriculture space. Some of the cooperatives come to mind. Unfortunately, they've been targeted because of, their scale. But for the farmer or rancher, going back to that, how can they protect themselves from these very sophisticated attacks, things that look like they are legit that end up not being?
Yeah, great question. Number one thing we tell people is take a beat. You know, if you're being asked to do a financial transaction, if you're being asked to change a financial transaction or respond to some kind of offer from someone you don't know, take a minute. Verify that offer is legit. Verify that accounting number, routing number is legitimate. We see if people can just take a minute and verify things, it can cut a lot of this fraud out. But also recognize that people are going to be victimized, and sometimes they can't help it. And we encourage every farmer and rancher to have a cyber defense plan and have the FBI be part of that plan. Be prepared to call the FBI if you need help, if you've been the victim of ransomware, if you've been the victim of a fraud online, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. If people call us rather quickly, especially if it's a financial fraud, we can often take some steps to claw that money back. But we have to be engaged pretty quickly. And then there's a number of things people can do to harden themselves, whether using multi-factor authentication, whether keeping their critical data in an air-gap backup, cutting out the ability for people to access their network remotely, a number of things people can take to help harden their defenses.
You brought up a reference that I thought was interesting, asking people, what's the crown jewel you want to protect on your operation in this case? And to think about that, you're not always going to be able to protect 100% of what you do in your assets, but think about the crown jewel. Explain that concept for me.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like anything we want to protect in life, you can protect it, and the more you want to protect it, the more it will cost, and the more it might hinder your operations. You have to identify what are the things that if this is impacted, this will impact our ability to operate. What we see now is you can't even buy a piece of modern farm equipment that isn't connected to the internet. And that's good. That ability to do precision agriculture, to control exactly how we're farming our fields and raising our livestock has made us very productive. Also makes us vulnerable. So people need to identify, we recommend they think about, like, what things on their farm or ranch, if this was impacted, would really shut us down during a critical time, and what's our plan to overcome that? There might be some things that aren't critical. They would be okay if it took a couple weeks to get back in line. There are other things, think of like an irrigation system being affected, could be extremely critical and needs to be fixed rather quickly. And so we encourage everyone to take a look at what are the crown jewels of their operation, what has to be really protected at a high degree, and what are other things that it's okay if there's a higher level of vulnerability.
As we summarize, technology is great, but it makes us a little bit more vulnerable, especially in the agriculture sector. We've been visiting with Gene Cow. He is the FBI Special Agent in charge of the Omaha Field Office. Some great insight there from Agent Cow on a very serious topic. If you'd like to hear more from him, we've provided an additional link with this story. You can find that article over on the Market Journal homepage. Up next, we know that caring for cattle is a full-time job of its own, but cold weather ahead will add a few more challenges when it comes to grazing operations. Market Journal's Bill Dodd shares some advice when it comes to preparing your cattle for winter conditions.
Winter weather is beginning to bear down on producers in the Midwest. Colder temperatures and snow-covered pastures are becoming less accommodating for livestock by the day. On the bright side, there are a plethora of management practices that can go a long way in helping your herd maintain their health and productivity during these cold days. The first thing you need to concern yourself with are the bare necessities. The three main necessities of any grazing operation hinge on water, fencing, and feed. And of course, the need for feed will vary from one operation to another.
Later in the winter and the fall, we'll go back to corn stalks or some other after grass, things like that. And now there's going to be more, they'll have to be purchasing their feed for the winter and that kind of stuff. But then there's also we're using more forages into the interseeding into the crop ground. So when the corn's out, they can come in with some turnips and radishes, things like that. We also have some that we just planted straight crop without going into it, corn stubble and stuff like that. So that's kind of some of our fall feeding. Everyone is a little different on their operation, on how they do it with the beef cattle. When you have purebred cattle compared to commercial cows, there's a little different scenarios sometimes on their operations and stuff.
Another aspect to consider is water. This is, without a doubt, the most essential aspect to take into consideration. Low temperatures can have a negative effect on many water delivery methods. However, while having free-flowing water would be good, being able to deliver warm water is even better.
The ideal is that they always do better and convert better if you got warm water. A lot of times we're on ponds. In the old days, you had to chop ice and stuff. Some places we have free-flowing wells, like in the sandhills, so that's handy. We have a free-flowing well on our place that it's never stopped for 56 years since it was put in. Just a couple times when in the summer with the pivots now and stuff like that, and that's along the Cedar River. But they're kind of handy when you don't have to chop ice and stuff. But there's newer machines, newer tanks and stuff like that with heated water and stuff like that. So water is a big important item, for livestock.
When it comes to keeping the herd contained, there are a number of fencing options at your disposal.
Again, this is one aspect that you'll want to have tailored to your specific needs.
Well, there's a couple things that you might want to be thinking. You know, these will be temporary fences. Usually that'll be going on your other crop ground and stuff. Like with the CRPs, you know, there's a lot of fences and a lot of water systems that aren't used anymore, especially up in the sandhills where there was a lot of irrigated corn that was, the grass was broke up years back, and now they're back to CRP. So some of that interstructure stuff's not there as easy. So you got to be looking at different fences, different types of things like that, of what to be using, for it. Nowadays, the fences, electric fences are a lot better, more powerful. You got high tensile fencing, you got pivot fences. You can go up through and make your pivot with electric fence on it, so you can move it for your, grazing systems, if that works for you. There's different options and stuff like that. So that fencing and water is a big thing when we're trying to move cattle.
All of these considerations are for naught, however, if you have nowhere to feed your herd. When it comes to leasing ground and care of livestock, it's highly recommended to hammer out all details of any lease agreement in writing.
So it's better to have it written down, for both sides of the parties to understand exactly who's responsible for what, from the prices to when they got to leave, who controls, if they have to feed extras. There's all kinds of questions that could be done ahead of time. Renting land, if it's pasture, corn ground, or about anything, but especially with livestock, you're looking at the length of time of grazing that's available for you, especially going into the winter, the stocking rate that you can use on your acres, the fences naturally, water quality, and the amount of corn left in the field. So that's a big thing right now. Nowadays there's a lot better machines. They don't leave as much corn on the ground. We have a good program through the extension office. Is one of the tools is corn stalk grazing calculator. So it works where you can put your yields down, and then it kind of helps you and your amount of cattle, and it tells you how many days you can be on that field and stuff. Nowadays you always hear how poor the quality of the stocks are for cattle. Really, we don't want to be eating the stocks themselves anyway. They should be moved before then, on that type of thing. So,
thanks for that story, Bill. We appreciate it. If you're looking for more winter cattle care guidance, a great resource to bookmark is beef.unl.edu. As we move along, this is usually the point of the show where we turn our attention over to the markets, but this week we've got a special story to share with you from our friends over at Backyard Farmer. Now, when you think of agriculture, you might go straight to corn, soybeans, or livestock, but grass, it's an important agriculture crop too. Earlier this year, the University of Nebraska's athletic program teamed up with the Turfgrass Science and Management team along with IANR to revitalize the outdoor practice fields at Hawks Champion Center. Here's a look at how that project came together.
It's been a tremendous, partnership between East Campus and the Turfgrass Science people that are there, and the College of Agriculture and the people that are here.
For Troy to come in and for Coach Rule to be thinking about regrassing the practice fields, it opens up a door for us to go back and reinvigorate the Turfgrass Science program. I so appreciate Troy and athletics really opening up our amazing athletic platforms to inform our teaching, our learning, and our outreach.
We're seeing a lot more facilities and places that are going into that because of the changes in technology and genetics with Bermuda grass.
Research and turf programs are a massive asset to any athletic program in any university with what they can provide for resources and knowledge. Having a specialized person like Amanda on their staff, having her, give her input is very important.
And you got more management you got to do with Bermuda grass.
So the research started when they were considering doing a different grass last year in 2024. Actually 1 full year since we had this installed. So we're seeing how the reaction of the cultural practices that have to be done. Bermuda grass is very different than other cool season grasses. because it loves the growth because of its rhizomes and stolons to take over, so it has more of that stronger canopy, and also to see how it held up with the weather that we had this past year. The warm season grasses like Bermuda for all the 3 cultivars do very well with drought conditions. So it's more to see what happens with the first year culture practices we'll do between the traffics that we had from year 1 to year 2. It's a no-brainer for us to be involved in this partnership, as we're a land-grant university with extension and have a turfgrass program that's still growing every year, and it's a big opportunity for us.
We officially broke ground here on March 10th. They removed, basically you have your sod layers, took that off. Then below that you have your sand base, took all that out. And then below that we have our drainage and gravel layer, which was all removed. Aside from the field itself, they're rebuilding the east perimeter fence. So there's been concrete work going on. There's been rebar work going on, just kind of some exterior work, because that has to all be done before you can kind of rebuild that profile. We're basically taking everything out all the way down, approximately 3 foot, starting over and rebuilding back up.
The one thing that's fortunate about this work that we're doing right now over here at the practice fields is we're having a USGA-based sand root zone. This is something that's a bit of a missing piece. When you have you want a good athletic field surface, it's not just the grass that's a big factor, it's also underneath.
We're going to have a lot of new things out here that are going to benefit us in the long run that we've never had before. And just the ability to redo the drainage and to have brand new irrigation based off of decisions we've made and things that we're putting together, that's what we anticipate, is to have a high level athletic performance field. One of the greatest things is being around at such a high level and such a high standard, and being a part of the day-to-day operations, being able to make decisions and put the work, into the fields. Very enjoyable for me, being that, I'm originally from here. I kind of grew up in this environment. I grew up, a Nebraska fan. The goal is to make sure that all the athletic fields, all the facilities here are top-notch. They're at a high standard, and one of our biggest priorities is player safety and safety on the fields.
I'm so excited that our Turfgrass Science program has a chance to be a national leader. Hope that our know-how helps lead to more Husker victories.
Big thanks to the folks at Backyard Farmer for letting us share that story with our Market Journal audience. And if you're looking for some gardening advice, Backyard Farmer, you probably already know this. They've got some of the best experts around to help you find all the answers you need. Up next, with the holiday season approaching, many farms are showcasing their homegrown Christmas trees and other local products as gift options. If you've been thinking about adding something new to your farming operation, seasonal offerings like these can be a great way to diversify. You can learn more about creating a new income stream, whether through agritourism or value-added products, in the November issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It's now time to check in on weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, we brought you in early this week for a taping because I understand you put together a more extended look at what we can expect over the next several weeks.
Well, thanks, Bryce. I do indeed have an extended forecast as sort of an early Thanksgiving present to a lot of you, though I'm not sure it's going to be perceived as good news. Sunday looks pretty nice, and by Monday we're looking at a trough coming into the southern plains. And if that does move a little bit further toward the northeast, I think we should see rain chances during the day on Monday across a good portion of the state. I do think regardless, the southern portion of the state, certainly along and south of Platte River, we're going to have some chances of moisture during the day on Monday. Not looking at significant amounts of precipitation coming in, and it'll all be in the form of rain. Also Monday, we're looking at troughing up here across British Columbia. That will slide toward the south and east during the day on Tuesday. We should see a cold front move through the state Tuesday night into Wednesday, bringing more seasonal temperatures as we head to the middle of the week. Thanksgiving looks dry across state, which that's good news. Temperatures a little on the cool side. Right now we're looking at highs mostly mid-30s to low 40s across the state. Certainly a little cool for this time of year, but certainly not the coldest Thanksgiving we've ever had. Real cold, though, is coming at some point, and I will just say what I'm showing you here is highly speculative. So if this actually were to verify, we may be dealing with blizzard-type conditions across this portion of the country with this deep trough in the west that would help develop a surface low somewhere here between Amarillo and Dodge City, and this is basically just screaming blizzard between Goodland, Kansas, and Wisconsin. So that would mean some very adverse weather for travel, certainly across this portion of the country as we have the weekend after Thanksgiving. But as a meteorologist, I will just tell you that when we have these types of events, when we get the sudden stratospheric warming, or sometimes even a stretching of the polar vortex, which is also possible. Right now, the former seems more probable. They really struggle with that coupling between the stratosphere and troposphere. In layman's terms, that just means there's a lot of uncertainty as exactly what we're going to get in terms of timing and exactly how cold it is. It's possible we may see just an appetizer cold right after Thanksgiving, and the main blast will be coming in a little bit later the week after next. But certainly I think there's going to be a pretty good chance that we're going to be pretty cold in the first week of December. And I also think there's going to be at least one of probably multiple chances for some snowfall across this region. There is an outside chance we may be dealing with a major winter storm, though, as we had post-Thanksgiving. So please pay close attention to the forecast later next week for post-Thanksgiving travel. CPC is definitely in agreement with it being cold here as we head into early December. Also showing a wet signal, which probably could be applied as decent chances of snowfall across this region. European model shows cold being favored for the entire region across for the first week of December. And if we do have a sudden stratospheric warming, that probably will be a longer duration of cold, perhaps lasting through the entire month of December. So a possible analog would be 2009, where we were not record cold, but we were certainly chilly across this entire region of the country that month. We also had quite a bit of snowfall, particularly across the eastern portion of the state. We had a couple of different blizzards that were highly impactful. I'm sure a lot of you probably remember that one on Christmas Eve that year. Speaking of moisture, we have not had much of it here across this portion of the country, including the entire state. So we are really starting to go the wrong way with soil moisture percentiles across the state. Soil temperatures right now are mostly in the 40s, right around 50 degrees. And here's the temperature and precipitation around it for the week ending November 15th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
All right, thanks for your outlook, Eric. We appreciate it. Finally, today, Nebraska producers are watching global markets closely as trade tensions and new trade deals are emerging. Nebraska cattleman Steve Hansen says that despite the geopolitical turbulence, the long-term outlook for U.S. beef remains solid. Steve White has more with Hansen, who wraps up his term as chairman of the U.S. Meat Export Federation.
LC Nebraska, people might think, well, Steve, what was a guy from LC Nebraska care about international trade and exports? But I think that goes to show that exports matter all across the state of Nebraska, don't they?
Yes, they do. They enhance the prices on everything. Grain, feed grains, all sorts of things, beef, hogs, everything is impacted by exports.
The value, I've seen a breakdown that talks about per animal, per carcass, how much value, even per bushel, however you want to look at it. Those are dollars that come and impact us on the farm.
Yeah, they are. Right now, we're at over $400 value in exports for beef animals, and roughly somewhere between $60 and $80 on value between pork. So it's a big difference. It makes a huge difference. In fact, it's a part of what success is in far as production in livestock in Nebraska.
The American producer, they eat a lot of ground beef, certainly, and then when they have a nice night out, they want to enjoy a ribeye or a nice cut like that. But there are all sorts of other cuts that come in from that animal, even things like intestines and the tripe, tongue, heart, that we're probably not going to find at the grocery store, but we can find markets for that.
I think this is probably the big value of exports. We wouldn't eat the tripe. We don't eat the tongue. It's not a regular meal at our house, and is it nowhere else in Nebraska or actually across the United States. But these values are made in exports over the seas, China, Japan, Korea, they all take something that we don't use.
And that's where the U.S. Meat Export Federation, tell people they've got a staff actually that's global, and they know those markets around the world.
We have roughly 120 people, Steve, worldwide, and they basically are experts in their areas. We have them stationed all over the globe, and they really help promote the U.S. product. That's what they do, is promote U.S. red meat, and it's a big, big positive.
And I take it you've had a chance to travel and kind of see some of that up close, right?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. I've been to Seoul, Korea, I've been to Japan, and I've been to Guatemala City this past summer to see the Latin American showcase. Every place has its own special way of doing things, but they all add value to the U.S. red meat, and in particular in Nebraska.
There are some challenges, though, in the current environment. We've got a tariff situation underway, and I guess we'll kind of work through that and see where things go. But as was pointed out at this meeting, you kind of take China out of the mix, and statistically, it's actually been a pretty solid year.
Yes, that is very true. You take China out of that mix, and it has been a solid year. Our exports are right where they've been, and if you look at the prices right now on U.S. beef, to hold those exports where they're at, that's a big deal. Pork is also strong, and it's been really a good situation for everybody concerned, the export values.
At least the cattle producer, there's a chance for profitability, which is something we have not, a few years ago, we did not have that opportunity. Some of that comes through exports. That's some of the chance of profitability we're having right now is because of that export situation.
There's no doubt of that, Steve, that exports are a part of that value. And really right now, if we just kind of forget about all the noise and we do what we do best, and that's raise a quality, safe product, it's nutrient dense, and it's looked at around the world for its quality. That's really what we're selling, is a quality product that people believe in, and so that's a big part of it. The exports, they add a lot of value, but we've become a trusted trading partner, and I think that's really a positive situation.
Steve, as we wrap things up, you must be just appreciative of this organization and those checkoff dollars that go to work to help meet the mission that we've got here.
That's very true, Steve. The checkoffs really help this organization promote our beef and pork worldwide. It's a great situation, and really, if you look around here today, the soybean people, the corn people, everybody is here trying to make this export situation work. And if it weren't for those checkoff dollars helping to basically promote that product and develop demand, that's probably one of the key things right now. If you look at demand, it's really strong because the checkoff dollar has worked to help create that.
Well, Steve Hansen from Elsie, outgoing chair of USMEF, joining us here in Indianapolis.
Thanks for that contribution, Steve. If you'd like to learn more about that USMEF fall planning meeting, you can find a full write-up over online at ruralradionetwork.com. That is going to do it for this week's edition of Market Journal. Quickly, want to let you know you missed one of our stories. Follow us on YouTube and on social media to join in on the conversation. Also, a heads up, next week we'll be coming to you from Kansas City with a special edition of Market Journal as we broadcast from the 2025 National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention. We'll hope you'll be back for that conversation then. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.